Hey, I'm Gretchen,
I'm Corey.
and we are Two Girls in Jesus. We are so excited to dig into our new series with you. Corey, you want to share with them what it is?
So we're going over relationships, and it could be a friendship, a marriage, a spouse, even people you work with.
Parents, all the people, all the relationships. And we are so excited. We've started it and it's been pretty eye-opening, wouldn't you say, so far?
Yeah, I like the verses so far.
Yeah, a little hard. I think some of them for me have been a little hard.
Well, the very first one was a little hard for me, but that was because of
Agreed.
my headspace.
Yeah. That one was hard for me, and I don't think I was in a bad headspace.
Well,
Not
today,
that you were.
today it feels a little better, but like
Okay.
every day, depending on the day you read something, it can
You're exactly right.
be
You're
different.
exactly right. You're exactly right. Because I have just go it when I'm reading through my Bible, I'll read a verse and I'll have a note out beside it, and I'm like, I'm not getting that from this verse today. All right, you want to take our first verse? Proverbs 15:1.
Sure.
Okay.
Um, I did NIV, NLT, and Easy. Easy was the one that helped me the most, I think. Um, because again, easy is a more gentle, kind way of wording things. So the NIV said, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I think we've all heard that at some point in our life in some type of way. But the easy version said, if you answer people in a kind way, it stops them being angry. But if you say cruel things, it makes people angry. So I spend a lot of time trying to be kind and gentle and just not necessarily say all the things that I'm thinking, which they tell us to do, but sometimes that's harmful to ourselves also, right? When you're always holding everything in. Um, so I decided that I would just turn this around on myself and tell myself to speak kindness to me. And
Yeah.
if I am happier, then I will be happier with others. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Absolutely, it does. It absolutely does.
Because the day that we did this, I said, right now I'm in a season of anger. I was just not in a good mood. And I was like, I don't even want to talk about this. I don't want to be nice to people anymore. That's what I mean.
That's just crazy how we can feel like that some days, like it's gonna make me feel better just to at somebody, and then it's over with and you're good.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? Were you mean to anybody that day? Do you remember?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I was. Probably my husband probably got the wrath that day. Or maybe he got the silent treatment because I decided I should just keep my mouth shut.
Uh-huh.
One
How
of
does
those
he
two things.
do? How does he do with the side when you're not talking? Not because you're angry at him per se or trying to punish him per se, but you're trying to keep from saying something angry, so you're just not speaking. How does he respond to that?
He will ask, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And I just say, mm-hmm. I know I'm doing it. Like I know what I'm doing. That's what's so frustrating is I know that I am not acting the right way, but I know that if I say something, it's gonna, maybe I wasn't mad at him that day, maybe I was, but either way, I knew I needed to just keep my mouth shut,
Yeah.
keep it to myself, because I didn't want my anger to be placed on him.
Hmm.
Was
And that's so mature, right? That's like the mature Christian thing to do. Why can't they just accept we're not speaking to spare their feelings?
because they're wondering what did they do
Uh-huh.
before realizing they did, or they care about us and they do want to know what's going on in our head, um,
Yeah.
because they know we're not in the right headspace and they just want
Right.
to help us get to.
Yeah.
He tells me he tells me that I'm hard on myself, so he knows that I need to be nicer to myself, and I don't know what it is. There's just certain days, certain things going on that everything doesn't add up the right way for that to be the best day.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good. at least there's a little communication between you two in those times. Um, and I think I love the fact, at least I think this is what happens, that when you say that, okay, he's picking up on it, so he just kind of backs off and just lets it alone. I used, of course, the NLT, and I also used a new version. The NLT says a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. And I also used the CEV, it's the Contemporary English Version. And this kind of just sucked it all in and just put it in a nice little bow for me. It says, a kind answer soothes angry feelings, but harsh words stir them up. My initial thoughts was this is extremely hard to do in the heat of the moment. This is extremely hard. Um, and where do you draw the line? Where's the boundary of speaking up for yourself, not letting people walk all over you? I've heard my mother say, and my mother still practices this to this day, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Well, but if I don't tell you how you offended me, you're never going to know you offended me, and it's going to keep happening, right? But the place where I find myself stuck is I know not to speak when I'm angry. I know that. I learned that a long time ago. And in my head, I'm like, okay, when I've calmed down and the moment presents itself, I will then say, hey, you know what? 6 months ago, when that offended me, you did this 6 months ago and it offended me. And I didn't want to speak to you when I was angry. So 6 months later, I'm telling you now. But
They probably don't remember that at all.
and no recollection at all. And what further complicates it is they don't remember what headspace they were in that day either. They don't remember that long ago what kind of day they were having. So it's 6 months later, or however long, 6 weeks, 6 days, whatever it is, they've done it again. So now I'm offended again. And now I'm more mad because they just did it again. I'm just a doormat. They treat me like a doormat. And that is a vicious cycle that I found myself in. I would not say anything. And it would just keep compounding and compounding and compounding until I couldn't hold my tongue. I didn't have a gentle answer. And I'm done being in my head, walked all over or taken advantage of in this area or this situation. So what I had to start doing, and it takes a little time, and a lot of people, especially moms with young kids, are going to be like, I don't even have time to brush my teeth or take a shower by myself. How am I going to find time to do this? But we have these nifty little things that you remind me of all the time, telephones. They're always typically in our hands. And if we can text, we can type a note in our phone, like a journal entry. This upset, get it out, get the anger out. We just have to let it out. And true, you're not letting it out to that person that hurt your feelings or offended you or whatever the case may be, but you're still getting it out. You're not holding on to it. I am a firm believer in actively getting things out, actively, like physically handing things over to God. So, just real quick, like if you're offended and you're mad and they don't know what they've done to hurt your feelings or offend you, whatever the case may be, write it in your note real quick, get it out, sit on it for a minute, just breathe it out. And then maybe in an hour or two, I can have a conversation about it. Again, the trap that I find myself in is that, okay, I'm not offended anymore. I got it out. I'm not worried about it. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not stewing. My thoughts are not spiraling. Okay, because I got it out. It's a couple hours later. That's the furthest thing from my mind. And so it never gets talked about. So I have not found a healthy balance in not speaking in anger, not making a hurtful offended situation worse by adding anger into it. Now we've got an argument, I can avoid that, but I'm struggling. Okay, so when do we bring this back up? You know? So that's the part that I'm still struggling with at this point. But I think it's easier to do this with somebody that you're not emotionally involved with, like a stranger. They like at the grocery store, someone cuts in line, or they have a smart comment or whatever. It's easy for me to ignore that because I'm not emotionally invested.
Right.
That's all I got for that one. Do you have anything else?
That's it for me too.
So our next verse on our relationship journey is James 19:20. I was excited when we got to this one to get back into James a little bit. I used the NLT and the easy version. The NLT says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce righteousness God desires." The easy version said, "Understand this, my Christian friends. We must all be careful to listen. We should not be too quick to speak. We should not get angry quickly. God wants us to do what is right. But when someone is angry, they do not do those right things." And I kind of felt like this verse could be taken two ways. First, in arguments with loved ones or just anyone that you find yourself in an argument with. I think it's easier to control that than if you are someone who just has an angry heart posture, like you live in anger. You're angry about everything all the time. I think it's important that we really try to listen to others and try to understand their point of view. But again, this is really hard in like the heat of the moment. Because in my head, I'm like, okay, that's what you think, but what about me? This is how this made me feel, whatever that the situation might be. And I think one thing that I had to understand with this verse is that anger comes from hurting. You were hurt. You could be angry about something that hurt you 30 years ago, still to this day. You don't have an angry heart posture, but if you get triggered, that thing makes you angry. And just in the heat of the moment, I think it's hard to realize those things at the drop of a hat. So I think what I have to do is try to see where they're coming from and choose my words carefully. So slow to speak, that's choosing my words carefully. I try not to choose words that are accusatory. But sometimes you can't help but to get angry because they're just not hearing you. They're not understanding your point of view or whatever the case may be. And so that's when I just think I have to stop talking and I have to get with God and let him intervene in this situation before it gets out of control.
I actually had in here that it kind of sucks that our past memories, they can protect us from our current world, right? From repeating the same problem over or something, but they can also cause us to react in a way that has nothing to do with the actual situation. But those negative thoughts, they're so intrusive and they get in so fast and so hard that we're going back to this time, and this present has nothing to do with that time, even though it's manifesting itself into the present. There have been a lot of times that I react to something quickly. I should slow down and take it all in, but something triggers that. And then a little bit later, I have to eat crow because it's pointed out to me, hey, that is not where we were at all. That's not what we were talking about. Where did that come from? Well, it came from my past memories and my negative, intrusive thoughts digging their way into the situation. So the NIV was, very similar to NLT. And like you said, just slow down. We take that in, those verses in, slow to speak, slow to become angry. That's not what we want to put out there. We don't want to put out there all the anger and bitterness that can be trapped in those negative thoughts that are entering our heads. That's not what we want people to think of when they think of us.
Right.
Them to think of us as kind and loving and all the wonderful things that we are. And especially if you meet a stranger, you don't want their first impression of you to be that you just let it all out there and you were quick to anger instead of thinking it through and really processing what you've just heard. So
Yeah.
that's all I have on that.
Yeah. So I think it would be important to maybe ask, if somebody says something and you immediately feel anger or you immediately are offended or, whatever the feeling may be that you need to have a conversation about. I wish I had the confidence to say, okay, can we stop and let me process what you just said?
I think that's good also sometimes to say, what I think you said was this, what I heard was this. And then they have the opportunity to say, no, that's not what I meant at all.
Yes, that is so good. This is what I heard. So what I'm hearing is you're saying this. Because when people try to explain when they talk, you hear through your worldview, you hear through your own lens that has been cultivated by all your prior years, right? And what makes you angry may not make someone else angry. We've talked about this, a lot in the seasons of waiting, is that you know we're going to go through the same situation, but we may react two different ways. And I think it's important to ask for time just to process what was said, and speak back to them what you heard them say. I think that is truly, truly powerful, Corey. That's awesome.
We'll have to try it out and get back to you and let you know if that works out.
Yes, yes, yes. We'll start practicing now, right? Do you have anything else for this verse?
No, that's all. All right. Our third verse is 1 Corinthians 16:14. And I wrote down the New King James Version. Let all that you do be done with love. And the NIV, do everything in love. So it was so short and sweet, right? So I read the verse just before it. And verse 13 says, be on your guard, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, be strong. So then when you read into let all that you do be done with love, it's telling you, be on your guard, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, be strong. So I just took that as I needed to read 13 before 14 to get the full understanding of what 14 was specifically speaking to. I think that even though we try to start every day with those things, that's our full intention is to do everything in love. That's our intention every morning, or at least it's mine. When I wake up, I want to start fresh. I want to forget about yesterday and just move forward with today being positive experience from beginning to end. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Some days we do. We have great days. And I'll tell you, on those days, I end my day just feeling great. I sleep better. Everything is so much better when I have a good day from beginning to end. And it happens so little that there's not something during the day that irritates or even makes me sad, or, I just hear something that doesn't set right. That's why I don't really watch the news anymore, because that anxiety of watching the news and seeing the same stories over and over and over. And so what I'm saying is I fail most days, that I really do start each day expecting and wanting to do everything in love.
Yeah.
So, NLT version.
The NLT says, and do everything with love. The Easy said, whatever you do it with love. The CEV said, show love in everything you do. And I also looked up the Good News translation, and it says, do all your work in love. And here was my first thought on this. Look, I love all God's people, just some more than others, right? Some people get a better version of me because they're easier to deal with. They don't trigger me. They don't get on my nerves. They don't act like a 12-year-old and they're 48 years old. Okay. Some people are just easier to deal with than others. Like, I know without a shadow of a doubt, let's just take last week when we were together. If I would have had one of those days where I just woke up, didn't want to face the world, didn't want to do anything, I could look at you and be like, Corey, I just need to stay in this bed. I just need to stay in this bedroom. I want to know that you're here, but I'm just having one of those days. You would totally respect that. You would say, is there anything I could do? You know, if you were going somewhere, you might check in and say, I'm going to go run get something to eat. Do you want anything or do you want to go? You would treat me with kindness. You would respect whatever it was I'm going through. You would respect however I'm feeling at that moment, but you would not exclude me in your daily routine. You would try to honor what I asked of you, but you would still be courteous, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And not everybody is like that, you know? And not every time that you're having one of those days do you have the opportunity to take that day for what it is. Last week would have been a perfect time to have one of those days because it was spring break for me, but no, I had great days. It was yesterday, the second day back to school, that I had one of those days. I just wanted everyone to leave me alone. And well, I'm a teacher to special ed kids. That's not going to happen. What I kind of unpacked as I was writing all these different versions out and just with my own thoughts, I don't necessarily think it means to do it with love. I mean, yes, love for other people, but not that emotional love. Do everything with the love of Jesus.
Right.
He healed people he didn't know. So I think when I look at it from that point of view, to do everything with love for Jesus, the love of Jesus, it makes it easier than thinking I have to love everybody.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, he laid out the foundation for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the Bible is our how-to book.
Exactly.
And he's telling us here, let all that you do be done with love. And I like what you're saying, the love of Jesus, and not love can have many different definitions.
Right.
But it's kindness. So if you do everything on your day to day with kindness, and thankfully God has mercy and grace on all of us, because
amen to that.
As much as I try, I fail most days.
Right. Yeah. Wow, that's good stuff. So our last verse for this week is 1 Peter 4:8. And that says from the NLT, most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins. And I've heard that before, that love covers sin, but I'm not sure that I've ever really studied out or unpacked what that meant. I think that when you have an emotional love with someone on whatever level, friendship, relationship, you know, husband, wife, parental, siblings, children, whatever level of love, it's easier to show them more grace and mercy. We forgive them more quickly, typically. We take offense from those people less often. I mean, let me preface all those things by saying it depends on what they do. Okay. It doesn't mean to let others walk all over you, nor does it mean that if we love someone perfectly, that we're saving them. Jesus is the only one who can do that. And when I read this verse, love covers a multitude of sins. Oh, I can love them through it because I have a servant's heart. You know, I'm a teacher. I can figure anything out. I can fix anything you break, except a vehicle. I mean, I can always find some duct tape and some super glue, right? I can fix it. And that was kind of the rabbit hole this verse took me down, is that I can love people through, and my love will cover them, and they'll see how much I love them, and then just bloom, they'll quit just whatever this sin is. But that's not a picture of what forgiveness is like between people. That is the perfect picture of God's love for us, right? He gives us chance after chance after chance. He gives us grace and mercy, usually when we don't deserve it. He forgives us just as we should others. I thought the context to this verse was important because Peter was writing this letter to Christians, people that followed Jesus, Jews and Gentiles. And they were living in areas that were not very Christian-like. They were foreigners in that land. They were probably being persecuted for their belief and following Jesus. I think it was important to know that because Peter is telling them to lean on each other, to love each other, because the people around you don't necessarily believe the same things you believe. And isn't that so true of today's society? Not everybody knows the love of Jesus, you know? And so if we're in a room, I'm going to gravitate towards the people that I can see are believers because I'm going to experience love there, right? So I think it's important who you surround yourself with. But as a human, I cannot love somebody through their sin and them just blossom like a flower. You know, I think a lot of times I fell into that trap.
Well, but you have to remember also, there was last week, and the week before that, where you are supposed to go out and share the love of Jesus with people. So sometimes by helping someone through a situation, you can. But I know the situation, or one of the situations that you were talking about where you couldn't love them through it, your love wasn't enough to get them through and past. But that's not every situation. So
I know, but there again, that's your past, that the lens in which you see through.
Yeah, and that's actually what I said in mine. The NIV says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. So very similar to what yours said. The easy version says, continue to love each other very much. That is more important than anything else. If you love people, you will forgive them for any wrong things they have done. And so I said, it's funny to me that you can read one verse and you can focus on one person, one situation. You can say, I did that.
Yes.
Oh, yay me, I did that. We should be doing that all the time. It's easy for me to get to that forgiveness part sometimes, but I can't necessarily give them me. I can't give them that love that they maybe received from me prior to my reasoning for having to forgive them. And you taught me that. You were like, just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you're welcoming them back into your world.
That's
You
right.
can forgive them without, I'm trying to think of the word that you use.
You can love them from afar. You can,
Well, that's
forgiveness does not mean reconciliation.
reconciliation. Right. I can forgive them. I can have love for them. I don't want anything bad to happen to them
Exactly.
at all. I just don't want them in my life.
Right.
And I'm not welcoming someone who causes pain and anger and bitterness and everything else to well up inside of me to be a part of my daily life. Not going to do it.
Yeah, I'm not either anymore. I did it for a lot of years.
I also noticed in the different versions, I did ESV, NIV, and Easy, and it said love earnestly in ESV, love deeply in NIV, love very much. So love earnestly, deeply, and very much. We can take all the verses and probably pull out one little thing and remember all of that together.
Yeah. I think, especially with these four that we're starting with, they were talking to the church, the body of Christ. Okay. But like what you said earlier, like when I said, I'm going to gravitate towards the people that I know are that believe the same as me, that follow the same Jesus that I follow, because I know I'm going to be safe there. They're going to be kind. They're going to be welcoming, you know. But that's the way I should be, even with people who I may obviously see. And I'm like, oh, they don't follow my Jesus, but I should be welcoming and loving and kind, even to those people that I don't necessarily feel that safety net with, and like
I don't feel a safety net with the church, because I've gone into the church and I've been shunned and I've been treated one way, gossiped about. Everybody doesn't have a great experience with church.
No, they do not. I have not.
And so to me, I'd probably rather run over to the people at the bar and have a conversation with them than run into a church and have a conversation with them, because I know what I'm going to get, because their masks are off. They are who they are. And some of them, yes, they probably have a little bit of a mask, but my experience inside of the church has been, I'm going to act this way right here, and I'm going to smile to your face, and then I'm going to talk about you as soon as I walk out the door. I'll be, ooh, girl, and just don't give me fake you. Give me you. Because when I find out you were fake, I'm going to have a whole different thought process on you as a person. Just give me the real you.
Yeah. And this is always the thing that has, the whole gossip thing. I think we fall into it before we realize we're there, because gossip is a sin. And I think it happens before we realize that that's what was happening.
Well, that's why we're all going to go to hell. If they're
without
not
Jesus,
grace, gossip. You could be watching TV and say, "Oh my God, look what they're wearing." That's a bad thing. And I know it's a TV character or whatever, but when we do that watching TV, we're going to do it in real life too.
Exactly. And, I think this is what I have never understood. Now, church, the building, church, the people inside that building, they should be jacked up because they need to be there, right? Jesus didn't come to save perfect people, because there are no perfect people. We all have something. We all do. And I am so much like you in the fact I would rather sit with the real people who are going to tell me exactly what they think, and I know exactly where I stand, than be around a bunch of people that I don't really know who they are, because they're portraying themselves as perfect, or at least the part of them that I see is as close to perfect as you will get. You know, they don't let you see their mess. And that's why when you and I started talking about this, because God had told us we needed to share this, just we're real people. We mess up. You might hear a cuss word. You might hear us get it wrong, because we are just real life people searching for God, seeking God, not searching because we know where He's at, but seeking Him to help us through life, to get through every day, to glorify Him and to advance His kingdom. And Jesus wasn't sitting, He didn't stay with only His disciples. He ate with the sinners and the tax collectors. He let the what was essentially the town prostitute wash His feet. She washed His feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. And the Pharisees are like, if you knew what she did, you wouldn't let her be touching you. And Jesus is like, I know exactly what she did, and she'll be remembered for what she did. That is the person that I want to be to everyone that I meet. You know what I mean? I don't want to be this stuffy, they think they can't be themselves around me. Jesus lover. This, I want to be the girl who loves Jesus. And I get you. I've been through life. I know it's hard. I know it sucks. I get it. You tell me anything. There's not anything you tell me that'll shock me. And I want to listen with the eyes and ears of Jesus. So I love that you said that about the church and the bar.
Just being honest.
And that's, and I mean, if I have to be honest with you, I'm more comfortable in the bar than I am at church, because I don't feel like everybody's staring at me. In the church, I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
I mean, when I do go to church, I try to not focus on that. I try to remember why I'm there. I'm not there for people. I'm there for Jesus, to worship Him, to learn about Him. And I try my best to really drown all that stuff, to blur it all out and just focus on Him.
Well, sometimes in the church, I see that people are putting on this face, and then you see them outside of church. It could be at the bar, the grocery store, it could be at a birthday party or a baby shower, and you see a different side to them that they don't actually want you to know. They want to pretend that they're only this person over here, but you get a couple of glasses of wine in them and you find out I'm the same person if I'm in church or out of church. Now, sometimes I might get a little more fun because I'm letting my hair down, but the person here is the same, whether I'm in the church or at a baby shower or in the bar.
Yeah. And I think it's important, I'm not knocking church. I'm not knocking it, because I love church. I love going and learning as much as I can, about the Bible and Jesus and the things that, the Bible that we get to read in the Bible. And I love, especially when they're talking about the culture, like the background of the Bible. I mean, I love learning about that stuff. I'm not knocking church at all, but and the Bible doesn't explicitly say you have to go to church. It doesn't say that. But what it does say is that if you have a problem with someone, you you're to take it to that person. And if it's not resolved, then you take one or two other people with you to that person. And then if that's not resolved, you get the elders involved, and those are in your church. If we did one, I can't remember where it was at, but where it was talking about the healing. You go to the elders and let them lay hands on you for your healing. That must have been towards the end of Seasons of Waiting. But so there are things that lay the groundwork that we are to be connected into a church, because that's the way we're supposed to handle certain situations.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking church either.
Oh yeah,
I just choose to watch an online service rather than go in and try to figure out this whole group of people. I just don't want to do it right now. I don't have the energy to figure out these people when all I'm really trying to do is dig into his word, and I don't need that fellowship right now, because that fellowship has harmed me.
right,
So I'm not looking for the church for my fellowship.
right,
Watch it online. I can listen to it in my car. I'm just not in a place where I want to go inside of a church right now.
right. And that was what I was saying all of that to say, church looks different to different people. I Girl, I can do all kinds of praise and worship in my car, in my shower, right by myself, and get more out of it because I'm not worried about the people around me if they're looking at me, or if they think I look silly because this song is making me tear up, or because I want to get on my knees and praise. This song is evoking that in me. I want to get on my knees and pray. I don't have to worry about that. And it would be nice to think that you don't have to, but in reality, you do. Some people just care less than others what people think, or you know, is this my best side for people to see, in this moment, whatever the case may be. Um, but I think church it looks differently to different people, and that is absolutely okay. Some people may watch this religiously every week, and this is their church.
I hope you're getting it from somewhere else.
I mean, I agree with that. Agreed, but you understand the premise. You understand where I was going with that. It can be a podcast, it can be an online service, it can be you and just a couple of your friends, you know, just watching an online service or a podcast and then having a discussion about it later, afterwards. I mean, it can look like a bunch of different things, and that's okay.
Well, I guess we're going to keep digging into all kinds of things through these relationships. And I hope everybody decides that they like this and they want to come back and see us again next week.
Yes, I'm really excited the further we get into relationships. And I have to keep reminding myself to not see it just through a certain lens. Apply it to marriage and parents and all the different kinds of relationships. I have to look at it through all of those different lenses. Because I don't want to be narrow-minded. All right, guys. So we hope you have enjoyed our first 4 verses in relationships. You can catch the full podcast version on YouTube and on Spotify. We are on the TikTok, the Lemonade. We're on Threads, Instagram. Where else are we, Corey? Facebook. On Facebook, we are just Two Girls in Jesus. On all the other socials, we're Two Girls in Jesus. The Just Two Girls, we on the Facebook, the Just Two Girls in Jesus, that's where we can interact with one another. We can make comments. And please, if you hear me saying something that you're not sure about, please ask the question. Y'all, I don't know everything. I don't always get it right. And I know, Corey, you share that same sentiment. Please like, share, subscribe, ring the bells, squeeze the lemons, heart stuff. And until next week, love each other well. And Corey, I love you dearly.
I love you.